record. Wearing black with fuchsia and red trim. When he stepped on the scale, he weighed in at an official 145.5 pounds. Started from the bottom now. He enters the ring.
And the elements, the atmosphere, the location. Canelo Alvarez, who's pretty comfortable fighting, training in the Las Vegas area, fighting in Las Vegas. Now here he comes across the world. Had to leave 3 weeks early to get here. Told us earlier this week that it took him up until about Monday to fully acclimate to his new surroundings. He says he's all the way there and says he'll be ready to go in this fight.
Yeah, that man right there, that Mexican superstar, has been owning Cinco de Mayo since 2012. Headlined 10 times already. Started with Shane Mosley in 2012. Here we are in 2025, still headlining, still pound for pound, still ahead of the game, and still on top of his game.
And we've experienced a lot of new things in this job, Sergio. I have never walked outside briefly and seen daylight during a fight.
Well, Canelo hopes to turn William School's lights out here tonight.
An undefeated three-division pound-for-pound king with 33 victories, 24 of those victories coming by way of KO. The former lightweight, former undisputed super lightweight, and tonight, making the first defense of his WBO welterweight championship of the world. Born, bred, and repping Omaha, Nebraska, Terence Crawford.
He has returned to Guadalajara in front of his people. This is a spectacle. This is as good as it gets in boxing.
You know, we've seen Canelo Alvarez with some elaborate ring walks. We've seen him enjoy those ring walks. I don't think I've seen one quite so elaborate, and I don't think I've seen him enjoy one quite so much.
Super middleweight champion of the world, Saul Canelo Alvarez.
Canelo Alvarez has not faced as educated.
Trying to come with a left uppercut.
Good uppercut by Alvarez again.
Try to hurt him here.
Another big right hand by Canelo. The right hand lead against the lefty. Right. Canelo will have to cut off the ring.
There you see a hard jab for Canelo. But Canelo now knows what the...
41 of the wins for Canelo, 26.
Yeah. He's trying. I mean, he's giving his best.
Crawford on the attack.
Oh my, look at it.
It's over. Do it.
115, 113, and Steve Weisfeld has it. 115, 113. All three scores go to the winner by unanimous decision from Omaha, Nebraska, USA. He is the new WBA Super Welterweight Champion of the World, Terence Crawford.
History is made.
A super fight between Saul Canelo Alvarez and Terence Bud Crawford sounds like a boxing fan's fantasy, and right now, that's exactly what it is. After 3 days of absolute chaos, walkbacks, rumors, and hush-hush calls behind the scenes, the targeted September 13th showdown at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas is still unconfirmed. But assuming both fighters ink the deal in the coming weeks, it won't just be one of the biggest fights of 2025. It might be the most fragile blockbuster since Mayweather versus Pacquiao. Here's the story so far, and the 5 massive concerns fans and insiders are already whispering about. Before we dive in, do me a quick favor, like this video and subscribe. 98% of you watch without subscribing, and it helps a ton. Done? Awesome. Now let's get into it. Before Saul Canelo Alvarez can even think about Terence Crawford and Allegiant Stadium, he has to make it through a very real, very risky assignment. a scheduled May clash with unbeaten IBF super middleweight champion William Skull. On paper, this fight has been marketed as a routine tune-up, part of Canelo's traditional Cinco de Mayo showcase. But behind the scenes, it's anything but casual. Skull might not have name recognition outside hardcore boxing circles, but make no mistake, he's no pushover. The Cuban-born German fighter is coming off a grueling win over Vladimir Shishkin and holds the very title Canelo vacated to pursue a more lucrative bout with Edgar Berlanga. Skull is not just hungry, he's validated, active, and carrying momentum. Add in the motivation of facing a generational star like Canelo, and this turns from a stay-busy fight into a high-risk, high-pressure situation. Here's where it gets complicated. Canelo needs this belt back. Reclaiming the IBF strap would restore his undisputed status at 168 pounds, making the potential Crawford bout even more historic. But boxing isn't a sport known for going according to script. If the Skull fight drags into deep waters, if there's a cut, a hand injury, or even a controversial decision, it could compromise everything planned for September. Canelo isn't getting younger. And at this point in his career, any war of attrition takes a toll that recovery time alone can't erase. There's also the political reality. Skull is a mandatory opponent, and sanctioning bodies don't like their champions taking shortcuts. Should Canelo emerge with a lackluster performance or suffer any damage, negotiations with Crawford could stall, be reshuffled, or collapse entirely. This isn't just a fight, it's a trapdoor under the entire Superfight plan. One wrong exchange in May, and a $150 million mega fight could vanish in an instant. For all of Terence "Bud" Crawford's brilliance in the ring, the surgical precision, the freakish switch hitting, the mental dominance, time is not on his side. Since 2020, Crawford has averaged just one fight per year, a trend that reflects as much on boxing's fractured politics as it does on his own career choices. While the victories, especially the masterclass against Errol Spence Jr., have been emphatic, the gaps between them have grown louder. At 37 years old, Bud is older than Canelo, less active and entering uncharted physical territory. Most recently seen at 154 pounds, he's now aiming to jump all the way to 168, a weight class where opponents hit harder, clinch stronger, and absorb punishment differently. This isn't just about moving up 2 divisions. It's about challenging biology, not just boxing strategy. Fighters don't often thrive when skipping an entire division, especially not in their late 30s when reflexes begin to dull and recovery takes longer. Even with the benefit of a long training camp, the transition won't be easy. It's not just about adding muscle. It's about re-engineering a body that built its dominance on quick-twitch reflexes, timing, and balance. At heavier weights, punches don't come faster. They come later and land harder. Will Bud still be the counter-punching genius at 168 that he was at 147, or will the weight dull his reactions just enough for Canelo to land? Then there's the mental toll of inactivity. Boxers live and die by rhythm. Time out of the ring doesn't just affect conditioning, it impacts timing, awareness, and the feel of the fight. Crawford's fighting instincts are elite, but instincts fade when they're not sharpened regularly. The psychological effects of entering the biggest fight of your life after a long layoff can't be ignored. Crawford has built a legacy defying doubters, overcoming politics, and shutting down champ. But this next leap isn't just historic, it's physically unprecedented in the modern era. With no warm-up fight at super middleweight to test the waters, he's heading straight into the fire. The question isn't whether Bud is still great, it's whether greatness can survive the weight. Let's strip away the promotional smoke and ask the uncomfortable question: why now? For years, Canelo Alvarez publicly downplayed the idea of fighting Terence Crawford, citing the obvious and very real size discrepancy. He has everything to gain and nothing to lose, he said in 2023, emphasizing that the risk-to-reward ratio simply didn't add up. So what changed? 2 words: turkey Al-Sheikh, the Saudi advisor and power broker behind Riyadh season, has turned the combat sports world upside down with blank check matchmaking. The reported $150 million offer to Canelo for this bout may have been too monumental to decline, even for a fighter who's already earned generational wealth. When you're being offered more for one night than you made across multiple title defenses, even the proudest champions take notice. But money is only part of the story. Quietly, Canelo has been playing a much bigger game, positioning himself not just as boxing's cash cow, but as its next true mogul. His promotional efforts have already begun bearing fruit, managing rising names like Teofimo Lopez and former opponent Jaime Munguia. He's no longer just chasing belts, he's chasing control. A win over Crawford doesn't just silence critics or add another trophy to the case. It enhances his value as a promoter, brand, and power player. The more historic his in-ring legacy becomes, the more leverage he gains at the negotiating table with networks, sponsors, and other fighters. It's the Oscar de la Hoya blueprint, using the tail end of a fighting career to launch an empire. So while the public may view this as a super fight for legacy, the deeper question remains. Is this about proving something inside the ring or building something outside of it? In his prime, at 147, Terence Crawford looked untouchable, slicing through champions with surgical precision, shifting stances mid-fight, and breaking down elite opponents mentally and physically. But the last time we saw him at 154, the aura began to shift. He was still dominant, but the physical margin for error was noticeably slimmer. Now, the ask is unprecedented. A jump from junior middleweight to full-fledged super middleweight, bypassing an entire division to face one of the most seasoned power-punching champions of this era. Even Crawford himself has acknowledged the steep climb. "I walk around heavier than people think," he once told Boxing Scene, "but it's different when you got a fight there." And he's right. Walking around at 170 is not the same as executing 12 elite-level rounds at 168, especially against someone who's been operating at that weight for over a decade. Crawford's style is built on subtlety, not brute force. His success hinges on lightning-fast reactions, rhythm changes, and pristine timing. At 168, where punches come slower but land heavier and clinch strength becomes critical, his entire toolkit gets a stress test. Can he keep his speed while adding mass? Will his movement suffer? Will his stamina hold up over the championship rounds under the weight of a re-engineered frame? The cautionary tale is clear. Roy Jones Jr., whose move to heavyweight earned him history, but ultimately shattered his physiology. Once he dropped back down, he was never the same. Could Crawford, at age 37, be on the verge of making the same sacrifice? Without a single fight to acclimate to 168, he's going from elite technician to scientific experiment in a matter of months, and there's no undo button if the gamble fails. This fight may be a once-in-a-generation spectacle, but it's also a traffic jam for two entire weight classes. That ripple effect is already being felt across the sport. Let's start at 154 pounds, where Crawford was one win away from potentially unifying the division. A bout with WBC and WBO champion Sebastian Fundora was on the table, followed by a winter showdown with Bakram Murtazaliev, a path that could have made Crawford the first male fighter in boxing's four-belt era to become undisputed in 3 separate divisions. That legacy-defining arc is now on ice and may never be revisited if the Canelo fight swallows the rest of his 2025. At 168 pounds, things are even messier. Canelo's path was crowded before Crawford even entered the conversation. David Benavidez, arguably the most avoided man in the division, has been campaigning for a shot at Canelo for years. Rising stars like Diego Pacheco and Christian Mbili are knocking loudly on the door, and mandatory obligations like William Skull, who's already slotted for May, have stacked up behind them. Add in the potential clash at 175 pounds, and the stakes skyrocket if Dmitry Bivol defeats Artur Beterbiev in their scheduled February rematch for light heavyweight supremacy. A historic rematch with Canelo for undisputed status could be next, but only if Canelo gets past Crawford unscathed. Here's the problem. If anything delays or derails Canelo Crawford, an injury, a contract dispute, or just the natural unpredictability of boxing, two divisions and half a dozen contenders are left holding the bag, forced to wait months or even a year before the landscape resets. It's a classic boxing paradox. To make one legendary moment, you might have to freeze the rest of the sport. Here's where business and boxing collide head-on. According to multiple insiders, when the idea of Canelo versus Crawford first surfaced behind closed doors, Alvarez's team allegedly floated a $150 million price tag, not as a starting point, but as a deterrent. It was a financial firewall, a polite way of saying this fight ain't happening. After all, asking for that kind of money more than he made for fights against Golovkin, Plant, or even Bivol seemed to signal that Canelo wasn't truly interested in stepping into the ring with a smaller, faster opponent who could make him look bad even in victory. It was a bluff, a financial escape hatch. But then came Turki Al-Sheikh, the architect of Saudi Arabia's combat sports revolution. Armed with the kind of budget that only oil-backed sovereign wealth can provide, Al-Sheikh didn't negotiate. He matched the number instantly. The theoretical became tangible. Suddenly, a fight that was never supposed to happen was on the table, backed by a check that even Canelo couldn't turn down. Was it legacy manipulation disguised as matchmaking? A clever way for Canelo to take a damned if you do, damned if you don't fight, but only if the money made it risk-proof? Or was it genius-level chess, forcing the sport's biggest payday to set the terms of engagement no matter how you frame it? Canelo's about to get paid like it's peak Mayweather season, and for better or worse, boxing's newest business model just rewrote the rules of matchmaking. As anticipation builds, so do the warnings, especially from those who've been in the trenches. Timothy Bradley, former two-division champion and now a respected analyst, offered perhaps the most sobering take on what Crawford is walking into. He's not going to back down, Bradley said about Bud, and that's what scares me. That dude Canelo is naturally strong and has been at this weight class for a long time. In other words, it's not just about skills, it's about survival. Crawford's genius lies in his ability to adapt mid-fight, but he's also a dog at heart. He loves to engage when challenged. And against Canelo, who throws bricks disguised as body shots and has mastered the art of cutting off the ring, that bravado could become a trap. If Crawford tries to trade in the pocket with a natural super middleweight who's been knocking out light heavyweights, it could be lights out early. One moment of pride, one miscalculation, and the fight could be over before Bud even settles into rhythm. So the question becomes, can Crawford stay disciplined, or will he get drawn into a shootout with the bull? When the greats can't agree, you know the fight's real. From heavyweight icons to recent champions, the boxing world is buzzing with hot takes and not a single consensus in sight. Mike Tyson says Canelo's too strong, Crawford's great, but size matters in boxing. Shakur Stevenson thinks Bud is too smart and he would figure Canelo out late. Teddy Atlas says it could end like Brook versus Golovkin. Andre Ward believes Crawford's movement and ring IQ could give Canelo nightmares. Roy Jones Jr. thinks Canelo's pressure and power would eventually break Crawford down. It's rare to see legends split this evenly, especially across weight classes and generations. But that's what makes this fight so combustible. It's a clash of everything: styles, eras, narratives, and legacy. One punch could decide it. One round could flip the script. We're still 7 months out, and boxing history has taught us to stay cautious. A bad cut in training, a contract snag, a change of heart from either camp. It wouldn't take much for this entire event to collapse. After all, we've seen bigger fights fall apart for smaller reasons. Remember Wilder Joshua in 2018? But if this thing holds together, If both men stay healthy, if the ink dries on the right contracts, if May's warm-up bouts don't throw a wrench into the machine, then what we're looking at isn't just the biggest boxing event of 2025. It's the biggest real fight since Mayweather versus Pacquiao. No exhibitions, no YouTubers, no gimmicks. Just two all-time greats from two different divisions meeting at the edge of their physical and mental limits. It's greatness chasing greatness, and it doesn't come around often. So now it's your turn. Who wins this fight? How is Canelo ducking or playing high-stakes chess? Does Crawford's body betray him at 168, or does he pull off the impossible? Drop your predictions below and circle September 13th, because if this one lands, history isn't just being made, it's being rewritten. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like this video to support the channel. Subscribe to my YouTube channel Boxing Edge for the latest updates, fight breakdowns, and expert analysis, and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload.